Welcome, welcome, welcome all. Happy Wednesday. If it's Wednesday, it's Wednesday. That's right. I knew that. We have an exciting conversation this afternoon. Thank everyone in advance for your time. I'm very excited for this afternoon's conversation. I hope everybody is ready to take some notes because we're going to get schooled today on the protective powers of out-of-school play. So homework about play. That's good homework. Get ready for it. I'm super, super duper excited. Well, I know folks are coming in. We're so excited to be here this day with you all. We're going to get started because there's so much to get to. My name is Aisha Upchurch. I am a lecturer on education and artist in residence at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. Welcome to Education Now. All the episodes are recorded and available on our YouTube and Facebook pages. So you're going to want to share this one in advance. I'm just going to let you know, and that's completely unbiased. But we have so much to get to today, and I'm excited to introduce our guests. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Joining us today, we have Sean Cassell, who's an assistant principal and supervisor of instruction at Seneca High School. That's part of the Lenape Regional High School District in Tabernacle, New Jersey. We are also going to be joined by Molly Easterlin, who's an assistant professor of clinical pediatrics at the Keck School of Medicine at the University of Southern California. She's also a pediatrician at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, and she's led a study on youth participation in team sports and mental health outcomes. More on that shortly. And finally, we are being joined by someone who really is on the go. We are being joined by Lorraine Orr, who is the Executive Vice President and Chief Operations Officer of the Boys and Girls Club of America. Welcome, Lorraine, Molly, and Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, are you all feeling ready to play?
Let's go for it.
Okay,
Let's do it.
All right, let's get into it. I've got my pen ready to take some notes as well, as I'm sure all of our attendees are going to be just jotting away. So I want to throw this question out to all of you to answer. Since we're talking about play, we're talking about sports, we're talking about recreation, can you all just go around briefly share, let the audience know a little bit about your backstory and your passions and interests that you had when you were growing up that helped shape and model the person you are today. Who would like to start?
I'll start.
Okay, Sean, go for it.
So I'm a high school educator. When I was a kid, I had a passion for athletics, played many sports. Many of my coaches and the parents who volunteered to coach became really important influences in my life, really shaped who I became as a kid, and really shaped who I became as an adult. So from there, one of the reasons I wanted to be a teacher and now an assistant principal at a high school.
Beautiful.
Much like Sean, I had a passion for sports growing up. I was a multi-sport athlete as a child, both competitively and recreationally, a collegiate soccer player, and I continue to play adult recreation sports today, and found that the life lessons I learned in sports I continue to apply in my life and in my job as an intensive care unit physician, and also inspired me to do the research I did on sports.
Beautiful. Thanks, Molly.
And my story is similar. I was a 3-sport athlete in college: volleyball, basketball, and softball. Played all throughout my childhood. And for me, it shaped who I am because it helped to build confidence, teamwork, and this community, right? In terms of the teams that I played for, and it's laid the foundation for what I do today.
Beautiful. Thank you all for sharing. I feel so right at home with you all and in this conversation. I mean, without sports, I really don't know who I'd be. And being the youngest in the family, whatever sports my siblings did, I just went along with it. I don't know that I would have chosen gymnastics, but it definitely was such a beautiful sport to be a part of and being in that team atmosphere. So it's great to be talking with these athlete, educator, youth workers today. So now we're going to dig into things a little bit deeper, get into this sandbox and really play today. And Molly, I want to start with you. You mentioned that you grew up playing sports, and shout out to soccer. I have such a respect for that sport. And you shared how that has influenced your life and your work as an adult. And you've also studied how participating in team sports during adolescence can impact the health of those who've suffered trauma in their childhood. Can you share a little bit more about what you found in that research with us today?
Yeah, so we did a study of about 5,000 adolescents who had been exposed to adversity in childhood. So they'd had adverse childhood experiences such as neglect, abuse, or household dysfunction. And we looked at if they participated in team sports as adolescents and compared those teens to those who did not participate in sports, and found that those who played sports had better long-term mental health outcomes with lower rates of depression and anxiety. So that was the main finding of our study. And then we went on to try to examine why that might be. If we see this connection, how is sports maybe playing this role? What are the factors? And if we can figure them out, maybe we could use them to design programs intentionally. And so the three that we found were increased school connectedness, increased self-esteem, and increased social acceptance among those adolescents.
Thank you so much. It's such a really intriguing study. And I'm sure the rest of us, having been athletes on the call and maybe those on the line, are kind of going through the Rolodex of our own experiences and thinking about what was happening beyond just kicking the ball or tumbling or throwing, and how that what you've studied kind of really does mean a lot for youth involved in sports and what happens afterwards. So moving on from there, Sean, I want to bounce the next question to you. What activities are you seeing that are really important to students at your high school when it comes to thinking about centering, embracing, and really nurturing their mental health?
Well, I'm observationally, what I have found, especially through the pandemic, is that students who participate in extracurriculars and things that go beyond the school day, really things that are anchored in helping others, whether it's your teammates or your school, the name on the front of the jersey, those are the things that really help students, really help them mentally. What I see in terms of the data is better attendance, better grades. Students have less discipline that normally wouldn't outside of their seasons. They have more mentors in their lives through coaches, and I think all of those things really add up to what we're talking about today, which is making sure people understand how important it is for students to be involved in something. If it's community service, it's the same concept, really helping others and helping yourself in the long run.
I love that you mentioned a bit about community service. We're thinking about, sports and play, and there's for a lot of folks, a probably pretty concrete image or frame that comes up. When we start talking about the effects, and like Molly shared from her research around what people are getting out of the organization of sports or play activities, and talking about community service as another type of one of those mechanisms where folks can gather and be supportive of each other and be nurturing themselves through that kind of collective activity. I'm glad you mentioned that. So at your school, just to dig a little deeper, if we could, are students voluntarily engaging in community service, or did you all have structures that funnel them to community service?
Really both. I mean, what we saw in the pandemic when students were learning from home, there wasn't as much of an engagement as they were when they were in the building. I know that seems obvious now, but at the time, transitioning them back to school for some students was extremely difficult. So one of the things that we used as a mechanism to help students get reintegrated back in school was community service. We found that some students were more apt to help others, and then we would host those events at school or on site, and that would be the gateway for them to step foot back in the building, socialize with their peers in a more traditional sense, and then that might, for some, it helped them come back to school full time.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that insight on how you all how community service became that bridge during the pandemic and coming back when students were coming back. Speaking of community, I'm sure for many folks, the Boys and Girls Club of America is kind of like a staple community organization. So Lorraine, can you speak to us around what activities that you all are championing that bring in those elements that Sean and Molly have talked about in terms of service, supporting each other, the mental health of young people? What's happening at Boys and Girls Club?
Yeah, so for us, the greatest protective factor for positive youth development is having meaningful relationships with a caring adult. So our work really centralizes on the role of relationships, both adults and positive relationships with their peers while they're in our clubs. I would say the second thing is that our approach centralizes fun and play. I mean, at the end of the day, play is the work of childhood, right? And it's how young people de-stress. And to put it another way, I think play is the opposite of trauma. And if there's a third approach, it is, clubs implement fun, engaging, and skill building activities. And for us, it's focused on 3 outcome areas. That's academic success, character and leadership, and health and wellness. So regardless if they are engaging in a service learning project or leadership development activities, it really is around ensuring that they feel emotionally and physically safe inside of our buildings.
I love that. And I know that for myself, and I'm sure Molly and Sean, you can speak to again, like as you mentioned, Lorraine, the essential component here is about the relationships between these people in their spaces of play and fun. I personally believe in fun as a human right. Don't know if anybody.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, we all are in agreement on that. Yeah.
Yes.
But that relationship between the young people and the adults who are facilitating these spaces. Sure. And so when we think about adults and the role that they have in making sure that there's a way for our young people to feel their fully whole, healed, happy selves, can you all speak to maybe some experiences you've facilitated yourself or witnessed where the adults, the caregivers, parents, educators, some tips that they can kind of cling to be those best supports that are undergirding this relationship where fun and play and healing can happen in these activities?
Sure. I'll start. I think that the first thing for parents is really to seek to understand what the activities are and the experiences that will be offered to their young people, and really asking questions around the quality of the program, like what safety measures are in place, what are the ratios, what activities, all of those essential questions that as parents we really should be paying attention to. And if there's another thing that I would mention, and then I'll turn it to the others, it's just really that the parents getting engaged and understanding and knowing the staff that are engaging with their young people in these activities.
And I would say too that recognizing the activities should be positive childhood experiences. So yes, just as Lorraine is saying, making sure that we're intentional, that the environments are safe and the relationships are supportive. And in terms of coaches in particular, what kind of leadership skills do they have? How are they motivating the athletes? And so just thinking about that when you're choosing activities. And then I think just as parents, creating time for children to play. This is a type of learning, and just dedicating time for that and recognizing it's important.
The only thing I would add to that is, or jump off of that is the pick, having the right people coaching students is vital. Understanding that each student comes with their own personal experiences, and appreciating what they bring to a team atmosphere, and really facilitating and fostering that team atmosphere. Every one of you is important. Every one of you matters, regardless if you're the star on the team or the person the person who plays the least on the team. Understanding what each person contributes to that community, and that to me is a really vital part of coaching young people.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're getting so many beautiful questions. I knew attendees would come ready with notes and thoughts. So we're gonna, in just a moment here, make some space to pull in some of the questions from folks attending. Your previous answers get us into the neighborhood of maybe the part of this conversation that's less exciting, kind of hard to make fun. And Molly, I know that you've got, well, all of you all, I know you've got some particular experience and some thoughts on when we talk about accessibility, right? And so we've been using the words sports and play that definitely can be interchangeable. And we're not always talking about organized, structured sports. We're thinking about also those informal spaces, or quote unquote informal kind of structures of play. But when the issue of access comes up around time, around money, around location, how do we navigate making sure that all the benefits that you all have been talking about around play, how can we make sure students, young people can have access to those benefits when there may be cost prohibitive or other access barriers in the way? What are some nuggets that you all can give our listeners today on that?
Go ahead, Molly.
Molly, you can start.
I was going to say, I think this is a really important question, because some of the people who can benefit so much from these activities have the least access to them. And especially with organized sports, there's pay-to-play fees, there's school budget cuts, things like that, creating issues. So I think enhancing programs and infrastructure at the community level, as well as at the school level and school leagues, and trying to create involvement there that's less cost prohibitive. And then I think another thing is, as educators, just recognizing that this is a type of learning and helping dedicate some time to that type of learning. Can it be incorporated into the classroom or the school day more? And then I think lastly, just at the policy level, we really need to advocate for this type of thing. This is an issue of health, child health, both mental and physical. And we need to dedicate resources to support our children and to support their health.
And I would agree. The only thing that I would add, I think it is an issue of health, but it's also an issue of equity, right? As you think about some of the barriers that exist in some of our communities. And I'm with you, this partnership, community partnerships. So for us, we partner with schools, we partner with Parks and Recreation, and try to get our quality programs in every community that is possible. And for me, it boils down to inequities, and access and opportunity starts to break down those barriers.
I would add that I think communication to all parties, all people who are involved, parents specifically, that there are resources to help them. From a school administrator standpoint, my job in part is to remove those barriers as best I can and help students find ways to contribute to the school, and of course in turn, helping their own mental health. And I think it's a two-way partnership there. But communicating with parents, both in the community and at school, here are ways you can get your kid involved, and here are resources you have if the barrier is money, and here's the resources you have if the barrier is time. And then if there's policies that go counter to the mission, then I think it's important for parents to and educators to speak up about them and change those policies so that there aren't even further barriers that prevent students from getting the benefits of participating.
Such a beautiful point, the need to work in collectivity and make sure it's mission driven. Again, I would even say, what's the conversation between the young person and the adults in their lives around what's the role of these organized, kind of more formal spaces having. And one of the questions that's coming to us, we'll try to get to as many as we can in the time left. So I know you're our softball expert, but I'm gonna try to throw underhand a couple of these just to you all, just so we can get a couple of voices here. But in terms of that pressure with organized sports, that, we're talking about the benefits of being in these spaces and playing and gaining confidence and working with your peers. Sometimes there's a lot of pressure around the team has to win. So being inside of a school, Sean, I wonder what's something that you can offer and how to help students and their families navigate framing sports and that pressure around it in a better way.
Well, I think it starts with parents understanding the purpose of sports. A lot of times of what I see at the high school level, and I was a high school coach for a couple sports, what I see is the parents putting a lot of pressure on their children to get a scholarship to pay for college. And unfortunately, the realities of surround that make playing, more difficult. That takes some of the joy that you have as a kid and it pulls it out and it makes it more of a job. And I think so parents can really communicate with their children, look, you love playing this, play it because you love it, not for any other reason. And I understand there's a need to pay, to help supplement, with the costs of post-secondary endeavors. But, if that is the main focus and that is the only goal, then often it does put pressure on students and some of them don't know necessarily how to handle that. So I think that's where the coach can step in and remind students why they're doing what they're doing.
And you're pointing to, again, a word that Lorraine brought up, it's relationship, the relationship between the other adults in the lives of these children. So no one's operating as this island or this person who has to now be the sole, like, I can figure it all out for this young person, probably, most likely not. So again, the relationships between the different adults to be in agreement on how to work with each other to make sure that young person's having a successful time. Couple of questions around what else could count as play? So I want to throw this one to you, Molly. So we've talked about organized sports. What about our gamers? What about our musicians? Maybe does your research or kind of the frames you found around what's helpful around these organized places of play, does that extend to things that are not given the sports label?
So I haven't investigated gaming, but we did try to look at music, orchestra, drama as best we could. And I want to put a caveat that our data set was limited in looking at it. We didn't quite see the same effects of those activities as we did for team sports. And again, we were looking at team sports, not necessarily individual. And so I think some of our finding was really related to the team environment and what we've been talking about, the relationships, the social connection. And so that's really what we found. Others who probably worked a little more in the fields of gaming or other activities might be able to speak more to that.
Awesome. Lorraine, there's a question around, well, what if there's so many options and I can't figure out what I'm interested in? So it's all too much. And now it all sounds like it'll be great, but I can't pick one. How do we help our young people kind of pick an interest, but also not feel so pigeonholed to it or overwhelmed by the different options?
Yeah, so really good question. But what we found is when you give young people a broad range of activities, you're exposing them to so many different things. The odds are is that there's going to be that one thing that where a young person finds that spark, right? Where he or she finds that passion while they're building on it, on all of these knowledges and skills. So I don't see, or we in our work, we don't see a negative negative in exposing young people to a variety of different activities, because they will find that one thing that just lights them up. The key is us as adults asking them the questions around, where are they finding joy and fun? And when we see that spark, helping them to then lean into that. And it doesn't mean that that's the only thing that they'll do, right? But it's the thing that is bringing them the greatest joy.
I love it. If it's not joy driven, I don't want no parts of it.
I hear you.
So yeah. But here, we adults, we have to do things that are not always fun, but we figure out that paying taxes can be kind of like a sport. It's kind of like, okay. That's what I tell myself. So I'm going to lift up one more question, and any one of you all, please feel free to contribute to a response. I'm going to kind of combine a couple here so that we can get to as many the questions that were put forth by attendees. So we have our non-athletic friends, or who have been deemed or feel themselves to be non-athletic. How can we reframe or help them re-embrace play away from those sports, away from these kind of organized, either varsity, JV, what have you? So what are some other ways we can offer play as an invitation to people who don't identify as being athletic?
One of the things that I do want to point out is and I'll circle back to the community service, which I think is important. I mean, it can be fun. It doesn't have to be a grind, So I think community service is a great way to get kids involved who may not necessarily be interested in sports. And then you can get that same effect, I think, through other avenues as well. Like our school just hosted a musical, and that team atmosphere that you see on the baseball team can really be replicated in a play form. And the confidence boosting is there. The sense of community is there. The sense of accomplishment is there. All those ingredients are there. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a sport to really provide those things.
Yeah, just as Sean was saying, the things we found that played a role in sports, the self-esteem, social acceptance, increased connectedness. I think any activity that can generate those types of relationships could be beneficial in just the same way for people less inclined to play sports.
Absolutely. Lorraine, did you want to jump?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and we found the same thing, and that's, everything from, somebody mentioned videos earlier, esports is really big, but it builds community amongst young people, particularly teens, because you'll find more sitting and watching than are playing, and they're building community at that time. But cooking, arts, spoken word, just ways for young people to express themselves. And I mean, you can find that in STEM, you can find it in spoken word, all of those activities. So it's again about that passion, that spark, and you can get the same benefits as you would in team sports.
I love that. This sets us up for our final, oh my goodness, time's gone, y'all. This sets us up for our final question. This is going to be like quick fire, speak from your gut, no wrong answer, because we're playing and it's fun. So sometimes we've called the name of this Ed Now's episode, the protective powers of out of school play. So sometimes the out of school label, the extracurricular label, can be problematic because people focus on the extra and the away from, as if these activities that we've been talking about are not essential to the whole child. So today we get to invent a new term so that it helps people remember that these are essential and not additive. What would you want to call these in life? We're tossing away extracurricular, we're tossing away out of school. What would you call these activities we're talking about? What's the terminology? Who wants to go first? Lorraine, you're on.
Yep. So for me, I'm big on community building. So it would be youth community building.
Youth community building, love it.
Mm-hmm.
Molly, how about you?
I think holistic developmental activities. I think they provide physical health, mental health, well-being, resilience, and that's important to a holistic learning environment that incorporates the whole child, the whole person.
Holistic developmental activities. Okay, beautiful. Sean, last word. What are we calling these from now on?
I don't know. They're great. I tried to think of something and I got nothing. I just think they're fun and they should be fun. And maybe that's where it is. Fundamentals. I don't know.
This is the mic. I'm dropping it. Fundamentals. Wow. Wow. You got that in there. Lorraine, Molly, Sean, thank you so much for being amazing guests today. I hope everyone that joined us was able to take away something. And you go out and spread the power of play. Have a beautiful day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.